Hey, what's up, guys? My name's Jeff. That's my wife. We are My Wife Still Likes Me, or My Husband Still Likes Me. I don't know. Is that weird?
Happy spouse, happy house.
Oh, my gosh.
What year is it again?
All of that really is my wife.
Should I leave?
And we're going to roll an intro I haven't made yet, but hopefully it looks good.
Your voice changes when you do that.
Still married, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Lay it on me.
You better answer this right. Who has been the best cooks in your life? What did they make, and why did it make such a good or make such an impression on you?
There was a restaurant in Greece that I ate at every day for a week.
Not surprised.
I traded a Zippo, like lighter,
I know,
with the ship seal on it, for the entire week's worth of drinks. Because the guy wanted a Navy Zippo, and it cost $15 for this light. It's probably not $15. Anyway, was relatively inexpensive, and I drank Corona for a week at this restaurant. I had to pay for my food, but the drinks were free because the guy wanted a Navy Zippo. Because out of all of the ships that have ever stopped in this place, nobody ever gave him a lighter.
That's so random.
But the food was good. But it was all like local stuff. Yeah. But that was like 20 years ago, so I don't even remember what we ate.
I'm impressed that you remember going there.
To Greece?
You had a great time.
Oh, yeah. I had a wonderful time. I have found every bar between Norfolk and Baghdad. Anyway, yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't the right answer, but go ahead.
Oh my God.
No,
Yes, you can cook. I'm sorry. And most everything you make, if I like it, is good. If I don't like it, it doesn't matter if you made it or not.
no, for me, it was probably my uncle. And my uncle was an amazing man, and he loved cooking, and he instilled that love of cooking in my cousins as well, and even in me. And he was one of those guys that he just poured his love into everything that he made. And so every time we ate at his house, you could taste the love in his food, even if he burnt something, which was rare. But, that's my answer.
And how is mine not the right answer?
Because you're supposed to love your wife.
I do love you.
You didn't even honorable mention.
Oh my gosh.
I love you.
I love you too.
What are we talking about?
I don't know. Those chocolate chip cookies are always good though. But that's not dinner. The children are singing again. It's fantastic.
Slightly
Anyway.
off key.
In-laws. We are talking about in-laws again because it is a common question that I get all the time. We've all heard the stories. As you have said in our pre-show, that there are whole social media accounts dedicated to the horror stories.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember her name, but the lady with the glasses.
Yes, Brittany, I think her name is.
Yes. Brittany, yeah.
Love her content.
I feel bad for Mark. I wonder if Mark's his real name.
Maybe. Or Brittany's her real name. But
Oh, yeah.
yeah, but she's also doing skits based off of stories that are sent in to her.
I know, but it's just full disclosure, we do not have these horror stories.
No.
At all, not even close. My mother-in-law is awesome. We do a lot of work together. And I'm
I
not
love
saying
my-
that just because she watches our children all the time, because she does watch our children all the time, because we wouldn't have date day without her. But I genuinely enjoy hanging out with your parents. What is that? You
Yeah.
couldn't find me one day, and I was at your dad's house watching NASCAR.
There's so many stories. Or COVID. When COVID hit, my sister was pregnant. And so my mother, to be able to be there for my sister and have her feel comfortable, she went through a full quarantine. She didn't have any contact with anybody. And when, life started to be a little less hectic and she was done with her quarantine and all of that jazz, the first person to give my mother a hug was not me, her, oldest and favorite daughter. No, it was you. And I'm still bitter about that.
Clearly.
Yeah, I'll say it. Yes, we are both blessed. We have an amazing sets of parents who love us regardless of how our shenanigans have rolled out over the years.
And love us to the point of our conversation today. Love us without telling us how to be married.
Yes.
They have always been there for support and questions and, hey, what do you think about this? Or like my mom calls me all the time to ask me how I'm transferring through my midlife crisis. It's yellow. It has 500 horsepower and 6 gears. It's wonderful. Seriously, though, my mother calls us to make sure that we're doing okay. Not that she's telling us how to live our lives. But the reality is a lot of couples, this is the number one issue. And it's something that we get asked about more than anything else is how do I deal with in-laws?
Yeah.
And generally speaking, it's rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Because, we hear the stories. Oh, hey, the TV shut off. Cool.
All right.
Whatever. Anyway, I don't know where the button is. Not important. We've heard the stories. Oh, but it's my mom. Let's just do it this one time. Oh, but it's... that's funny. It's on the back. Down. It's top on the edge. Right here. On the curved part. Anyway, I'm just not going to have a logo for this episode. You'll just have to come find us. Anyway.
Mother-in-laws.
Yeah. Oh, but it's my mom. Just let her do it this one time. Oh, my mom wants us to do this. Oh, my dad wants us to do this. Or dad's father-in-laws. You need to just do it this way. Now, sometimes they're right. But more often, there's some form, and we talked about this before, there's some form of fear on the in-laws side of two opposite ends of the spectrum. You're not good enough for their little girl or guy, boy, or they feel like they screwed theirs up and they don't want you to screw up. So they're trying to, they mean well most of the time. There are the toxic Kens and Karens of the world that just want to be part of your marriage way more than anybody ever needs to.
Right.
But the thing that we need to think about and need to remember is that in our context of being 100 and 100, we are committed to this. And it is only this. Yes, we have in-laws. And if you are blessed to have a good relationship with your in-laws, then that circle can expand. But unlike our in-laws who have never told us how we're supposed to live and act in our marriage, they've encouraged us and we've asked and gotten suggestions. Most of us have in-laws that are simply just telling us how to live our life. And if we're not going to follow those directions, they're going to tell us or threaten us to withdraw from our lives. And if only that were true.
Yes. Yeah. But like growing up, there's always going to be those things that your parents drive you nuts on certain things. Well, guess what? The things that are going to drive you nuts is probably going to drive your spouse nuts as well. So at the end of the day, you got to choose your spouse. Because
you can't, yeah.
Yeah.
And this one's always a tough one because, like,
parents mean well.
They do.
Most of the time.
Most of the time. By and large, they mean well. And so there's some fear of failure on your part or our part as the children, and that they'd want to see us succeed and do well, just like we want to see our own kids succeed and do well. And so we're not saying this shouldn't be part of our lives, but we should set boundaries, right? And communicate about those boundaries. And then the biggest one, I feel like this is backwards. We have talked about enforcing the agreed upon rules with our children. We also have to enforce the agreed upon boundaries with our in-laws.
Yes.
Right? And chances are pretty good it's not all of the in-laws, it's one in-law.
Normally, yes.
Because generally speaking, father-in-laws don't care.
Yeah. This is true.
Don't care in assuming you followed all the traditional routes. You asked him if you could marry his daughter, and you're doing well to try to take care of her.
Yeah.
Generally, you're not going to have any problems with a father-in-law. And I'm
Yeah.
clearly overgeneralizing a lot of things. But there is, and most of the stories we hear are mother-in-laws trying to dictate how son-in-laws should treat their daughters.
Mm-hmm.
Or
mother-in-laws trying to dictate to daughter-in-laws
Yes.
is probably the most common.
And it's, if you're an in-law, knock it off.
Yeah, but
I
I
don't know
mean,
the right way to say that. I'm sorry.
I got you, boo. As parents, regardless of how old they are, your children are going to have to fail on their own. Like, you know, my son can ride a two-wheeler on his own. Did he fall off this bike at some points and scrape up his knees? Yes. But that's part of the learning process. And as parents, we have to let them go through those growing pains. Well, I imagine as they get older, they're going to go through the same things. My mother told me when we got married, you are more than welcome to come back at any time. You are not sleeping here. And granted, she meant in the context of having a fight. You know, you got married. You have
All of us live there. At
yeah,
one point.
this is true. We've spent the night for various reasons too, but you know, at the end of the day, she said, you are choosing this one person to do life with. So there's going to be times that you guys are going to screw up or make mistakes or fail, and you got to own that. And so you have to go home.
Yes. And to tag on to that, seeking advice from your parents
Is okay.
is fine, but don't complain to your parents about your spouse.
Ooh, that's
because
good.
then you're going to get the advice you want, and then it's going to turn into be negative on your spouse. And it's like, I committed to this. This needs to get better.
Yeah.
And so complaining to our parents doesn't fix anything, and potentially drives the wedge in even more.
Well, yeah. And if you're complaining about your spouse, guess what? When you're in that heat of the moment, you're just frustrated and irritated. You're only going to be highlighting the worst parts. You're not going to be giving the context. And that's just human nature. Just like on social media, you're going to highlight the best or the worst. There's no in between. So you could potentially damage the relationship between your significant other and your parents. What are you laughing at?
Because we're talking about social media, and
Yeah.
it's like we see all of these relationships, and they're like, "Oh, my mother-in-law really is awesome."
She really is.
But really,
She is. My mother is awesome, but your mother is amazing as well. Don't
really,
diminish.
I'm not, but you were really quick to say that. My mother-in-law is awesome. She is. Oh my gosh. Anyway, social media. Like I heard this the other day that, specifically in relationships. Oh, you know, my mother-in-law did this, and she's helping us do this. And we see those things, and like, oh, that's cool. I want that. I'm like, well, you know, it used to be, you know, the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Well, the grass is greener on the other side now because it's fake.
Yeah. It's facts. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just going through this idea that sometimes it's necessary to remove toxic relationships, right? If you have an in-law that is just toxic, together as a couple, you need to decide how to address the issue or remove the person. If you got to not invite them to Christmas dinner, tough.
Yeah.
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 You have to do what's best for your immediate relationship and family, you know, if there's kids and stuff involved.
Yeah, but I think we need to talk about the child situation. So if it was your mother would never do this, so context for everybody. But if it came to a point where your mother was being the stereotypical horrible mother-in-law to me, you also need to be the one to stand up to your parent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think that we as a society talk about that enough, that it's a two-person street. So the married in spouse is the outsider in your
Yes.
family unit, and you have chosen that person to join into the fold, to join into your family. And so part of your expectation now as the child, the existing family, is you need to protect your spouse.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's from your mother, sometimes it's from your father, sometimes it's siblings. So, we
Yeah.
need to say that out loud,
I
that
think it's the best word I can think of. It's unfortunate we have to think of it this way, but you have to be willing to go to bat and defend your family versus your family,
yeah.
which is horrible that we even have to have conversations like this. But,
Yeah.
and that's I want to say it's for the toxic ones, because chances
Yeah.
are pretty good. And most of the times that we've had conversations with people, if you sit down and have conversations with your in-laws, 90% of the time they just didn't know any different.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're just, nobody talked to them about it, because there's not a book on how to be. There probably is a book that somebody wrote on how to be in-laws, but it's not like babies don't come with instruction manuals, and neither do in-laws.
Yeah.
So most of the time, if you have the conversation, hey, we feel like you're overstepping a little bit, can you back off a little bit? Chances are pretty good
Yeah.
they're going to want to have a conversation about why, but maybe understand it. There are the toxic ones, and you just got to rip the Band-Aid off. Hey, you're cut off.
Yes.
Last call was a couple hours ago and we're done. But for the rest of them, have the conversation. Hey, this is my family now. And it should be, mom or dad to son, or mom and dad to daughter. And then the spouse is not the one to have that conversation, or do it together. Like if it needs to be group effort, that's fine.
It's typically better, though, if you are speaking directly to your parent that is involved in that triangle of mess. But at the end of the day, like, on the other side of the spectrum, like, there are times where you marry the wrong person and your family is trying to really just look out for you. But that's why it's important to have a conversation with them to see where this is coming from, where the rationale is coming from. And realistically, like, if your parents really disapprove of your spouse, they're going to be very vocal about that before you get married anyways.
Yeah. Which is just, that's a whole different conversation.
That's a whole other show. But
you should pick the right one.
Yeah. But, having a conversation is really the biggest step, is, within your marriage unit, because, sometimes kids come before marriage. But really just looking out for this relationship between you and your spouse, because they're the person that you're choosing to spend your life with. And that comes before everything. And I think sometimes we forget that, because, the stereotype of, blood first doesn't hold true anymore.
Yeah. Well, or you have to
You lost it.
Yes. No, that whole phrase, though, is drastically taken out of context.
Oh, of course it is. But that's what everybody hears.
Yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, like, there's going to be times where you have to cut your family off. And unfortunately, I've had friends who've had to cut their family off for one reason or another. And it's because of the family's toxic behavior. They've had multiple conversations and the parent is not willing to change. And so, we aren't here to tell you that you can or cannot cut off your family, because at the end of the day, like, you don't want your house to fall because of a parent.
Yeah. And that's, we're in this thing in my normal job, crucial conversations. Mm-hmm. And they're uncomfortable, they're difficult, and we don't want to have them. But if you've had the cordial, if you will, conversations with your in-laws and they're still butting in, then you need to have the discussion about cutting them off and be like, hey, you're not coming to Christmas dinner. Now, you may have to move it somewhere else if you're going to enforce that. And that may be the reality that it finally clicks. Oh, maybe I need to stop, or I don't know. Who knows? People, the human brain is interesting.
Yeah.
But we have to do better at protecting this.
Yeah. And my plug is always going to be, it's okay to not be okay. And sometimes part of that conversation with the in-laws may need to be with a licensed therapist. And,
Oh, yeah.
The more letters after the name, probably the better they are. So, you know.
And we are very much not mental health professionals. No. So if you need mental health, or you feel like this is something you need to pursue further, go and do it.
Yeah.
I don't know about this one, but we try to be casually humorous about life tactics and how to be better at marriage. And sometimes being better at marriage is having less people be a part of it.
Yes.
Because it should be 2 plus your children. And arguably it should be 2.
Well, it should always be 2, because realistically, do you want to take advice? Because I've got, we have a 9 and 2 7-year-olds. I don't want to take advice from my 7-year-olds.
Sometimes they're right.
I don't care.
But in the context of we chose to do this life together.
Yes.
It's not we chose to do this life together. You and I chose to do this life together. You and your spouse chose to do life together. If it's toxic, you don't need your in-laws telling you how to do that life together, because there's plenty of social media and YouTube and all of the people already telling you how not to do life together. They're doing what we're doing. But genuinely though, go seek counseling, therapists, premarital, postmarital counseling, coaching, whatever. Go get some. That sounds really bad.
I know.
Go get some. Whatever. Interpret that however you want.
Cannot want your bad self.
Fruit optional.
Oh my gosh.
At My Wife Still Likes Me, at mywifestilllikesme.com. Comment, like, subscribe, tell us we're nuts. And we will see you next time. Bye.